This is the Rebel HR Podcast. If you're a professional looking for innovative, thought-provoking information in the world of human resources, this is the right podcast for you. Rebel on, HR Rebels. All right, Rebel HR listeners, I'm extremely excited to welcome back to the Rebel HR Podcast, Aleah Vaske, one of our common guests here, and somebody that I'm sure that you're going to love to catch up with. So, Aleah, thank you for joining us again.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this again.
Absolutely. Well, we're glad to have you back on the show. I think you were on our third episode ever when we were trying to uncover the mystery of Gen Z. So that's been a few months ago now. So why don't you let our listeners know kind of what you've been up to?
So, I actually, after recording a podcast with Kyle, was inspired to kind of start a project of my own with my team at UNI on UNI SHRM. And we actually started a podcast called Generation HR, which is not just about Gen Z, but a lot about all of the different generations, what they care about, and how they can intertwine in the workplace. Our first segment was focused a lot on the new LGBTQ law that was passed in June with the Supreme Court ruling. So that's what I did most recently. And now I actually have a blog that focuses a lot on makeup and mental health is what it's called. So focusing on mental health in the workplace. So those are some of the recent things that I've done. I'm still going to school for human resources and marketing and getting my industrial organizational psychology certificate at the University of Northern Iowa. And so I'll wrap up this semester in a few weeks, and then I'll be a senior, which is very weird to think about.
Boy, your college experience was way different than mine was. Maybe we just leave it at that and let everybody's imagination run wild.
You mean you weren't like doing like 5 podcasts in college?
Well, first of all, podcasts didn't exist when I went to school. In fact, Facebook was at the point I was going to school was only available for college students, and it was like a brand new thing. Let's just say the Facebook messages, the Facebook memories that pop up from a long time ago are pretty humorous to read, and I'm just glad that they're all private at this point. Well, good for you. It sounds like you are just already starting to make waves in the world of human resources, and congratulations on almost getting there. Although I'm sure that you and nobody in your family ever was concerned about you graduating from whatever institution you wanted to go to. So kudos to you. So I know and I appreciate the opportunity to be the guest on the Generation HR podcast. And the perspective that you brought there. I'm curious to dig in a little bit more into some of your research on mental health. Makeup, I'm not going to be able to talk about much, but I'm really interested to learn about the mental health aspect.
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily say that I've conducted a lot of research, which is kind of the tone that I wanted to set for my blog in the first place. I really like it to be very authentic, coming from the heart, if you will. I know that sounds very fluffy, but
it's very HR.
A lot of the topics that I've wrote about are actually things that I've been seeing on social media. We also just had someone on Kaylee's podcast, Helpful Resources. Her name was Madison, and she's from the UK, and she has her own platform called Mental Health Matters at Work. And her story is kind of what inspired me to get into this realm and talk about some of these issues. I've always been passionate about it, but that was kind of just what launched me with all these topics that I could talk about. The first step that I took was going on my social media and asking my followers, what topics do you guys want to hear about? And I got a lot of feedback, which actually kind of opens up another can of worms that maybe these people, aren't seeing these things talked about anywhere else. And I know that mental health even though it's come a long way, there's still a certain stigma around it, especially in the workplace. So I definitely took the opportunity to be the person that talked about some of those topics, even if I hadn't experienced them personally. I kind of dove into asking some of the people that suggested the topics, why they did, what their story was, and that's kind of where I started.
So as you were digging into mental health and specifically, mental health in the workplace, did you see any common themes present themselves?
So actually, it's been pretty all over the place. I would say one of the common themes would definitely be work-life balance. A lot of people I know are struggling with that, especially now, since there is a really not hard separation between work and life, as we're all kind of, some of us are still working from home, and a lot of concern going back into the workplace because then you have to really completely rework your balance again. So I would say that was the topic that I saw come up the most, is the work life balance.
Interesting. So from your standpoint, do you actually think that work-life balance is appropriate? Is your generation view it that way, or is it a situation where it's more of a work-life integration?
I would say this is how I view it. I feel like we are almost living to work rather than working to live, if that makes any sense at all. So I think that there's just been too much emphasis sometimes, whether it's, you personally are putting too much emphasis on it, or the culture in your organization puts too much emphasis on it. But my perspective is that your whole life shouldn't center around work. Like, yes, you should work as a part of your life, but life is really about enjoying life, enjoying family, making relationships, and work is a part of it. I want to do what I'm passionate about. So that especially helps if you're passionate about what you're doing. But that's the way that I view it, if that makes sense.
Sure. So you're in the camp of do what you love and you never work a day in your life. Is that encompassing what you're saying?
I wouldn't say so, because no matter how much I love something, I know that some days I'm not going to want to go to work, and that's just the way it is. That's kind of how humans are, and that's especially with the mental health thing. Like, it's not always going to be perfect. I could meditate every single day and still have insecurities and struggles and all of that. But my perspective is kind of what you said. I feel like if work is something I am passionate about, I am working to live. Like, work is part of my goals in life and how I want my life to look like, but it's not everything. That's my take on that.
Got
And
it.
I'll go into a little bit of a project that I've been doing. So, my friend from Entrepreneurs Club, which Entrepreneurs Club talks about this all the time because we really struggle as entrepreneurs to find a work life balance when you pretty much have to put your whole heart and soul into something if you're starting it from scratch. She came up with this idea with her family that instead of setting a New Year's resolution, which often doesn't work for a lot of us, including me, you instead pick a word to think and reflect on and make that your goal throughout the year. So actually, this year, my word is balance. So I don't know. And I was kind of thinking of ways like, what does balance even mean, really? And the best definition that I could come up with, or measurable way, was the 8 dimensions of wellness, which we learn now. It's a required course for all the college students at UNI to take a dimensions of well-being course, which I'm not going to remember all of them, but it's like emotional well-being, social, financial, environmental, intellectual, occupational, and then there's a few more that I must be forgetting. But I've
That's all
been
right. There's no test
actually,
here.
yeah,
I don't know the
I've been
answer to that.
actually keeping track of what I do hour by hour every single day and putting it in a spreadsheet and then sorting them to see how much time I spend on each dimension of well-being. which obviously it's not going to be equal. I knew that going into it. I'm in school right now. That's my priority. So school should take up most of my time, which based on my data, it has. But it's still important for me to spend at least 1 hour doing one dimension of the well-being each week. So that has been my goal. And it's been interesting to just see like how many hours in a day, I don't know, that I'm working on stuff. It's just been interesting.
I cannot be a role model or speak about work-life balance. It doesn't exist for me. It's very much just work-life integration for me, where I'm always connected, and part of that's the product of my role being a global HR person. I have employees operating 24 hours a day, 6 days a week at least. My day anyway. So and then I do side hustles and all sorts of different things, and I think the one thing that I struggle with the most or have the most guilt about is the balance between family time and work time, and that's where I get off kilter. So I definitely I feel that that balance is tough for me, and I think it gets tougher the more responsibilities you have to others. It's I think it was easier for me to have balance when it was just me and my girlfriend, my future wife, versus now when I have 3 kids and a dog and a fish that I have to change the water for, those kinds of things.
Yeah. I can't relate to that. So once I have kids and a fish and all of that, maybe my outlook will be different on the work-life balance. I'm sure it will, but I'm trying to be proactive.
Well, I think what you're hitting on is really critical, is trying to figure out what's healthy now, while you are still in a point in your life where you have that luxury. I think is critical, so that you have that healthy relationship down the road. So I think what you're doing is very smart. Are you finding, as you're talking to people and sharing this content and interacting with others, that other people are feeling the same way, or that this type of focus resonates with them?
As far as the work-life balance, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, I would say that what people really resonate with is the work-life separation, so that when you're not at work, you're not working. Kind of like what you were saying, it's very integrated for you. People, I think, have a hard time understanding like balance and really how what that means and how much hours should go into each thing. And because obviously our work is going to be taking up most of our time, because that's what we were doing in our life. We're working 9 to 5, whatever. And then let's be honest, none of us actually get done at 5. It's like get supper and then continue working if you have to get something done. So I think it's just, especially for me, I'm like, there's just a point where you have to not check emails for like an hour, or just like unplug a little bit and have that separation. And if I'm with my family right now, I'm definitely not checking emails. Like I'm separated from work. So that's what people have resonated with a lot, I think, the most. And I've come up with some creative ways and heard creative ways from other people to make sure that I hold myself accountable to that. So I know a friend who literally does not get notifications at certain times of the day. So you can set it on your phone where you do not get any emails coming through if your phone is plugged in the charger. So that would be like at night. Like once it's plugged in the charger, or if you want to have dinner, go plug your phone in the charger. You're not getting any emails, because I know that if I get an email, I'll automatically want to respond to it if I see it. And then some of the other things, let me think. I think it's just a lot about setting boundaries, which kind of goes to what you were saying before. Like, I'm glad I'm doing this now so that I make the boundaries for myself, so that when it gets tougher to hold those boundaries later on in my life, I know, okay, well, this is my boundary. I said while I'm having dinner with my family, I'm not going to check my email. So like I've done it for my whole life. Now it's a habit. It's a boundary that I know. So I'm going to try to continue that.
Right. Right. Good for you. Yeah, I think it's an interesting challenge. And I think it's very similar. I'm just reflecting on my personal interaction with work. Getting that little notification on your phone that you have an email. It's about the same thing as getting like a notification on, this is going to make me sound old, Facebook, or what's cool. What do you use? What's the cool social?
I use
You
Facebook.
use Facebook? Okay, I don't feel
Yeah.
quite so
Well,
old.
Snapchat is probably like the notification from Snapchat would probably be like more comparable to email for me.
Okay, so Snapchat. So we'll be hip. I think I have like 12 people on Snapchat. And there's no content on Snapchat for me. I don't really get it, except that my kids like me to turn the phone around and do the cat face and the puppy face or whatever. You can do the age face. That's depressing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those kinds of things. So that's the that's the level of maturity I have with social media. But yeah, so as I get an email, I get a little, you get the little red notification on your phone, and it's the same thing where you click in and you're like, oh, what is that? And then like 5, 10, 15 minutes later, you're like into your email and completely disconnected from wherever you're at. You're not present with whoever you're around, and I think that's part of the challenge with you know with building those boundaries and truly disconnecting. I think part of the struggles I have is, you mentioned earlier that, life is about more than work. Um, but for me, I like my work. I really enjoy it. And, I get to learn about, different cultures, and I get to interact with people, and I get to build relationships, and I get to and solve problems, and it's fun. So it is, there is an element there where it's enjoyable for me to work. I actually like it. Not every day. Sometimes it sucks, and I mean that's just what it means to work. But I don't know. So I question that sometimes, whether that's healthy or whether I'm a mild workaholic.
We'll be back after a quick break.
And so used to having everything in front of them right away that we forget that innovation just takes time. I myself, I get frustrated too. Why? And this as being one of my best friends is, hey, I talk to you all the time. Hey, man, I'm frustrated in the fact that I can't seem to just get there
Mm-hmm.
in the next day. But that's just not how these things work, right? Innovation needs to be planned out. It needs to be very methodical. And then when it finally hits, that's when it seems like to everyone else that it sort of just came out of nowhere. But to you, the amount of dedication that it took over that time.
There are things that I love to work on. Not everything, especially not school. Sorry, school. But
I don't think any of our listeners are identify as school. So I think you're saying.
I'm just like, if any of my professors are on here, love your class, love to study. But yeah, no, I do enjoy working on certain things. However, this is where I am making sure that I set the boundaries. Like when I'm working on stuff, your mind is just like so immersed, solving problems, doing all these things, even if I am, it brings me joy while I'm working on it. I feel like my mind still needs a break from that like total immersion. And I was talking with Kaylee actually about this the other day because we are both like, we love to multitask. And so I'll be like, oh, I'm working on like a whatever, and then have Netflix or whatever in the background. And it's like, I'm trying to get my work time and like my personal time in at the same time. But it's actually like more harmful to your brain because then your brain's like doing two things at once when really like your brain is craving that break. It's craving that, monotonous, just like watching a silly Netflix show and not having to think about problems and all of these different things. So that's where I think, yes, I do enjoy my work, of course, but I am recognizing that sometimes my mind needs a break from the complications of work and just needs to chillax for a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're hitting on there, and there's been some really interesting research and studies done on your brain's ability to context switch and truly go from one task to another comfortably. So like the I'll call it the myth of multitasking is
Yes.
actually potentially very harmful, and if not harmful, at least very, very fatiguing to your brain, because your brain it can't continuously switch context from one thing to another. So Zoom call, email, Zoom call, email, Zoom call. Like eventually your brain just like gets tired, right?
Right. And that's the other thing that we were just talking about with like the email. Like your brain switch from like, okay, family mode, okay, work mode. And then you just like get into a tunnel, especially if it's an email like, please get this done. And like, let's be real, if I see that, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I need to get this done, working on it. Hour later, after solving all of these problems, my brain's like, okay, now I have to go back to this. And it's so confusing for us. And just really, and that's the type of things that, where we see burnout happening is just not giving our brains that break. And it's a very true, like chemical, physical thing that happens.
Yeah, that one time I tried to put my 5-year-old on a corrective action plan. It didn't work so well, but I was still in work mode. So
Yeah.
there's no performance improvement plans for 5-year-old. That's good. Yeah, it's an interesting, a really interesting approach, and I think one of the things that's been really encouraging over the last, um, at least the last few years, is the focus on mental health in the workplace, and the fact that mental health should not be stigmatized. It truly is. It's medical health. It's brain health. Just because somebody is having mental health struggles does not mean that they should be ostracized or made to feel less than. We should be supporting them as employers and supporting them in the workplace. So, have you have you given any thought to the workplaces that tend to do that successfully and support their employees successfully? And as you're finding out about that, what are you finding they're doing right?
Yeah. So I think my sister had a company which, when coronavirus happened, like they already had stuff in place to help out their employees. And then this huge pandemic happens where you need it. And it's like, okay, great. Like we're doing the right thing. So I think that being proactive is everything. You talked about like, which I'm going to go two ways with this. So there's the existing mental health problems that employees have that you can make accommodations for and those things. And then there's like preventing the mental health issues, which is where, making sure that you have a cutoff time and that people aren't, in your office at wee hours of the night working 60 hours a week, which is just my opinion. I think that we need to take some preventative approaches as well. So the companies that I've seen do these things really successfully, and one of the things that actually attracted me to my internship this summer is like having those shorter work weeks. So my internship this summer is a 35-hour work week, which is 5 hours different from the 40. But I do think it makes a big difference because it's speaking to their employees like our culture values the work-life balance, and that is why we have this 35-hour work week, if that makes sense. Because if you don't, and it's kind of like ambiguous, and that's not something that you are really advertising to your employees, I just feel like they might kind of ignore the hours in their work week altogether. Whereas shortening it a little bit at least sends a message like, we want to be proactive and try to help you guys out and give you a little bit more of a break, even if it's getting off a half hour early each day. The other things that I find really important are obviously like having some counseling in your like benefits plan somehow, employee assistance programs, focus groups. We talked about like inclusion and diversity groups with different cultures and minorities. If your organization is big enough for that, having those types of support groups for employees, things like that.
Yeah, that's interesting that they're doing shorter work weeks. Are they doing that over just shorter days, or is it 4 days? How are they structuring that?
Yeah, so this one, it's you get off instead of getting off at 5, I'll get off at 4:30. So that's how their 35-hour work week is. But my sister, she also has a shorter work week. However, hers is all on Friday, so they get off at 2 on Friday instead of 5 on Friday. So whatever way you do it, and 35 versus 40 doesn't seem like that much, but it sent a message to me that they're trying and that they care, and that, yeah, I think it's all about sending that message and making sure that your employees know that there is some sort of, expected cutoff time rather than just having it be ambiguous like it has in the past, like kind of an unspoken rule or psychological contract that you have to stay so late in order to get this promotion or do that or get all your work done. It sent a message to me. That's
So you interpreted that as a message about work-life balance.
Yes, I did.
Hmm.
And I actually saw a tweet the other day that was about how much job descriptions tell you about the workplace's culture and whether they care about mental health. And I am going to do a TikTok on this. I need to find some job description and blur out all of the company's information and then analyze it. But I was thinking back to when I was looking for an internship and some of the key words that like made me not even want to give it a second look. I was like, I'm not applying there because, and I think that the keywords from my generation that we see are way different from your generation, probably. Like one of the keywords that came to mind was like a fast paced environment. For me, that has a negative connotation, but I know that it's been used in so many job descriptions. So I know it's probably negative to me, but not for everyone.
Oh, geez, I probably have that on every single one of my job descriptions. And now I
And I
gotta,
mean, it depends on who you're hiring. Like if you're trying to hire, you want to be honest about what's happening in the environment. But for me, that kind of, it had a negative, and I'm not saying that that's the only thing that I judge the job off of, but I couldn't help but think, I have like a bias towards that word. I don't like that word. It means something negative to me. It means that like it in my brain equaled stressful environment. That's what it equaled
got
for
it.
me. I don't know.
So what else? Give me some more. I'm writing this down. I got get the answers to the test. Okay, so take off fast paced. What are some other words?
That's what I need to figure out.
Okay.
One of the ones that I was looking at though, it was just like I could just tell that it was an internship by the job description, which is probably their intent. Like you don't want to have a job description that makes something seem like it's not, because then you're going to have turnover and things like that. But it was an internship for a bank, and I could just tell like it was very, like a coffee run internship. Like you're just there to do paperwork and get coffee. And like I knew that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted something where I was going to be like real life work. And it's just crazy that we can make those assumptions based off of a job description.
Yeah, that's interesting. Would it actually have been better? Would you have potentially applied if it said you're going to get coffee and do paperwork? This is an internship. Deal with it.
I would not have applied, but
Like
I
radical
would have
honesty.
appreciated the honesty. It would have saved me some time.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see, how would you turn that one? So, ensure that your office is fueled with, energy, and the culture is sustained through value added impacts, something like that, which basically means you're gonna get coffee for people.
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
good.
that was a pretty good way to twist it, I must say.
I've been writing job
Especially
descriptions for
since you put
years.
that, especially since you put that culture piece in there, because I think that my Gen Z brain is like, culture.
Culture.
I don't know. We've just had that like engraved in our brains. Like your company needs to have a good culture.
That's awesome. It's fascinating. I'm just reflecting on this, and this is maybe the first time that it's been articulated this way. But just thinking through the way that you state things in a job description, could be, um, for lack of a better word, turning people away, unintentionally. And I'm sure I'm guilty of this as I look at some of my job. I've got really long job descriptions. I have a lot of really technical jobs, which tend to have longer job descriptions. A lot of them sound kind of the same. So yeah, a candidate is going to get a feel for your company depending upon the words in your job descriptions. And so, a good reminder. So yeah, we'll
Definitely.
uh we'll plug the blog once you get that one up. I'm sure you'll have a number of interested parties looking for that. So I'm still fascinated about the 35-hour week thing, because your perspective is, oh, they care about my mental health and they care about work-life balance. My perspective is, oh, they just save payroll and they don't have to worry about overtime.
It's for the salary employees too, but no, I never thought of it that way. I really didn't. I guess here's the other thing. Here's the other thing to know about me. I am more motivated by working less hours than I am like getting more money. I've just noticed that about myself. And I know that's probably really backwards considering I'm a broke college student, but I have noticed that about myself. Like if somebody was like, "Oh yeah, you get weekends off and you get off at 4:30 instead of 5." But like this job over here like had more money just cuz you're working more hours, I would still value the other job. And I think that's probably true for a lot of your employees too. Like some of them are like, I don't care that much about money. I want more free time to achieve that work life balance and to be, the best version of myself. And that's just aligning with my goals and values that I have for myself. So,
That's good. I think that's really healthy. I think one of the areas that, you know, I think causes a lot of mental health challenges is an unhealthy relationship towards money, and viewing it as, the only thing, as opposed to viewing money as a tool to get the goods and services that you need to, live the lifestyle you want to live. And if you care too much about money, demons are going to present themselves one way or another, right? Whether that's mental health, unhealthy, working relationships, unhealthy relationships in general. Um, so I think that's a really healthy way to look at it. So, and hey, while you're a broke college student, you might as well. I mean, now's the time you don't have to care about money, because
yeah. I mean, I do care about money, but the trade off for me presents more value with the time off and, having a little break during the summer and yeah, doing fun things and getting off at 4:30 versus 5. I don't know. And just, yeah.
well, good for you. Although I have a feeling that you're a little bit of a harder worker than you're making yourself sound right now.
That's probably true. That is probably true. But yeah, just that's the message that it sent to me.
Aleah, I think you're an aspirational slacker.
That is probably a great definition. That probably is yeah, that could be true. And I think that the reason that I value time so much is because I feel like I never have enough of it. Like I want to do all these things. I have all these different side gigs, and just like you were saying, okay, well, you're getting paid 5 hours less each week. But for me, if I wanted to, I could, get contracted for a website and make up that money times actually too, because I get paid twice as much doing my website work. So if I wanted to, make up for the financial impact, I could.
Yeah,
But
I think that's a critical point too, and something that employers are going to have to figure out, because there has been a power shift, And a lot of it has to do with just the ability to earn money from anywhere, doing almost anything because of the internet over the last 20 years. The power balance had shifted from the employers having pretty much all the power to dictate time that people are going to be in the office and how much we pay you for that time, and we expect everybody to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week, to an economy where somebody wants to go do something else and do a side hustle, start a gig, maybe work two part-time jobs, but make as much as, I mean, the opportunities are pretty endless, and some of these jobs are also relatively passive in nature. And so I think there's an interesting nostalgia for, like, the work ethic of yesteryear. Everybody used to be such a hard worker. The truth is, people are working hard, they're just working differently. And the definition of hard work is actually continuing to change. So what's your reaction to some of the changes of those dynamics in the economy facing you today?
Yeah, I had this in my presentation for Disrupt HR. The side gig thing is huge, and it's going to become even bigger, especially now that we've seen COVID and some of the grocery, Instacart, DoorDash, all of those things have blown up even more. And people are going to keep with those same habits of getting delivery stuff after they've done it for half a year. So I'll say a benefit that I could see is, increasing that motivation potential score. So I personally design out my day, which this is a blog post, like design out my day because I have multiple jobs that I'm doing, but I find myself so much more productive, so much more motivated doing all these different jobs, spreading them out throughout my day than I would be like last semester. I had 2 days in my schedule a week to work for 10 hours to get my 20 hours in for my internship. And after that, I was like, no way. I spend the same amount of hours each week doing the same stuff, but I get so much more done now that I have added things in there, but spread out the different things throughout the week that I'm doing and even throughout the day. And I say I'm working no more than 2 hours on each thing, and I get a whole lot more done. So I feel like that could be a benefit that we possibly could see down the road with the gig economies. And I also feel like I'm able to get at all of my passions, which I don't know, I'm sure that other people have this too, but I'm not really just passionate about one thing. I really like marketing, but in design and all of those things. So I'm able to have my HR work for this half of the day and then, design a website a little bit for this half of the day. And granted, working from home is what makes that possible right now. But I still think that that could be something in the future that could make people more motivated to work because they already got this passion out of the way for the day or filled their cup that way, and then they can go to work and do this one. I don't know.
It sounds good, but I also am sitting here thinking, geez, that sounds complicated from an employer standpoint. I think there are certain businesses that works really well for, right?
Right.
Where you can structure work around an objective as opposed to, time spent, or work that can be done relatively uncollaboratively, right? I think that works
Mm-hmm.
really. I think one of the challenges we're facing at my organizations, and I'm hearing other HR professionals struggle with, is it's those collaborative jobs that have a relatively squishy work content that can't be measured, but really just works better when you've got an entire group of people working on the same thing in the same space. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where it gets challenging. And ultimately, I do think that the future of work is going to be much more up to the employees to determine what kind of structure works best for them. Because I think there's going to be more opportunity to do exactly what you described. But then there's also going to be an opportunity for those that prefer a little bit more, maybe stability, structure, and cohesion and collaboration in a on a longer term project on a larger team. So
And that's what I am hopeful happens, that, the different organizations will be able to be transparent about what the job is going to look like, and if that person is a right fit for the job based on if they like structure and routine and working with other people and being there from 9 to 5, or if they want to have all these different things. And I think there are both of those people in the world. I think there's people who are in between there. So I don't know in the future if we would anticipate that being a problem, but based on all of the different people and all of our unique characteristics, I feel like it might work better for us if we have that diversity in perspectives and the way we work.
yeah, awesome. Great conversation. I'm loving this topic, and I think I could go for another hour or two and pick your brain and have you help me figure out our work from home policy that we're still working on. But then I'd have to pay you a consulting fee, so we won't do that. All right, Aleah.
And remember, my consulting fee is twice as much. So
twice as much as this? Oh, I'll pay that.
Twice as much as I make at my day job.
Oh, I got it. I thought you were talking. This is a non-compensated interview, so I was like, I'll pay twice as much as I'm paying you right now.
That's zero.
All right, Aleah. It's been wonderful catching up with you, and it sounds like you're doing some really great things and are continuing to do that. Congratulations on your internship starting up soon, I'm really looking forward to continuing to follow your college career as well as beyond that. So I want to shift gears and go into the Rebel HR Flash Round. So this is something we started after you were last on the show. So this is the first time you've gone through the Flash Round. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I think so.
No pressure, no stress.
You didn't say you were going to take it harder on me this time. So.
All right. Question number 1. What are you reading right now?
I am reading Lori Rudiman's book, Betting on You. So we had her on our podcast. Well, I think it's on Kaylee's podcast. We had like a weird transition where we were having guests for Generation HR, but then we decided they went with Kaylee's platform better. So it's all about fixing the work of HR. And she signed it in my book and she said, Aleah, counting on you to fix HR. And I just love it.
Yeah, she's great. She's got she also has a podcast called Punk Rock HR. So
yes.
Yeah. So we're definitely like-minded. So great book, Betting on You. All right. Second question. Who should we be listening to?
Is it like a podcast or music?
Hey, whatever. This is your Flash Round.
Podcast. I have to plug my girl, Kaylee Worth, because I think if you want to hear more of this content about the Generation Z perspective, you should definitely check out her podcast, Helpful Resources. She has a lot of cool stuff on there, and I know that she's told me a few new people that she's interviewed that are pretty cool. So that's who I would say you should be listening to right now.
Cool. Perfect. I'm just curious, what is the music? What's the music genre?
I don't know. That's because I am a music person. It's almost like I have too many genres to choose from.
Okay, I'm with you.
I don't know. I just listen to whatever. I couldn't pick. My favorite song right now is like Peaches by Justin Bieber, which is sounds so teeny bopper when I say it. So, but I really like it.
Hey, you do you. Whatever. At least I know who Justin Bieber is, so that's a win.
Yes.
So
that is a win.
Generations collaboration right there.
Woo!
All right, last question. How can our listeners connect with you?
So, first of all, definitely check out my blog, Makeup and Mental Health. I love it when people leave me comments. I get so excited. I respond right away, despite everything that I've said about turning off your notifications. Also, I'm on LinkedIn, so Aleah Vaske, and my email is aleahvaske@gmail.com. So any of those ways I'll respond to.
Awesome.
Within a reasonable amount of time.
And we will have all that information in the show notes as well. So Great blog. Really appreciate the content. Thanks for coming and spending a few minutes with us here and letting our listeners catch up with what you've been up to. So, Aleah Vaske, people, thank you very much. Check her out on her blog, website. She's probably going to start on the business, and she's going to act like she's a slacker. Thanks, Aleah.
Yep.
All right, that does it for the Rebel HR podcast. Big thank you to our guests. Follow us on Facebook at Rebel HR Podcast, Twitter at Rebel HR Guy, or see our website at rebelhumanresources.com. The views and opinions expressed by Rebel HR Podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any of the organizations that we represent. No animals were harmed during the filming of this podcast.
Baby.